Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon, and for the last 2 days we've been playing mostly in low elo, so I'm going to be talking to you guys about some of the most common mistakes that happen in low elo. If I sounded all different, I got my wisdom teeth out about a week ago, so it's still a little weird to talk and stuff like that. But anyways, getting right into it, so if you guys don't know, Riot made it so now as a Sovereign you can only match people who are Challenger and higher, and in North America that means you pretty much can't find a game for the most part. Or if you do, your matchmaking is quite long. So we're playing on a Smurf account. I was starting around Plat. I'm currently Emerald 1. I think I'm one game from Diamond at the moment. But yeah, so going right into some of the most basic mistakes, we're just going to go over a game as we talk about them. Starting off with the lane phase. And the main thing about lane phase is that people don't actually play around their champion strengths in lane. And I think this Kayle is a good example of it, where pretty much they will always try to fight you. No matter what, they're going to try to trade in lane, whether they're a weak early game champ, strong early game champ, they're just going to try to fight without really thinking about when they should fight or why. They don't trade around their champion strengths, like for example, champions that stack things or that build lethal tempo or conqueror. They don't really play around that. They just kind of trade. They don't walk up for last hits specifically. They don't punish others when they go for last hits. So a lot of these are some of the main things, and they also don't know what all the champions do. So for example, I've had multiple people walk near my tower when I'm Mordekaiser with my pull. They just don't really pay attention to these types of things, which leads to you being able to get very, very big leads. And so then how do we kind of abuse these types of things in low elo? Well, one of the main things to understand is punishing last hits. When the enemy do walk up for a last hit, they're probably going to be very greedy for it, in low elo especially. And so when you see them being very greedy, make sure that you punish it. So if they're going for last hit, walk up and use your abilities on them, trade with them, that type of thing. And then again, trade around your champion strengths. That's usually going to make it a lot easier. Here I'm getting ganked, but I know if I just ult the Kayle, I'll be fine. I don't even end up needing to ult, but I was looking, if I can, I would ult her, of course, him. I don't actually know if it's Kayle, her, or him. I genuinely don't know. My fault on that, but yeah, so that's kind of a lot of the main mistakes I see. Just a really big lack of patience. And then I've also found that it's really, really easy to stack waves in low elo and then find insane wave crashes. So a lot of the time, I'm going to find myself in a freeze like this that you see right here. And especially when I'm playing a really good early game champion like Gnar, Fiora, whatever, I can end up building up this really big slow push and then eventually just trade really, really hard on the enemy once I have a bigger wave. So you can see here, for example, I just got level 6 off that wave. He's level 5. So I could like trade harder if I had a better wave state, for example. So trading around level advantages, that's another thing that they don't really do in low elo. So again, here you kind of just see I'm just like a little more aggro, but I'm also just getting the wave push because I know I have my item. Recalling on items as well, another big thing that we see a lot of low elo players not do. Like they don't recall at the proper timers for their items. They'll recall like 200 gold short of their boots, for example, instead of staying a wave, or they'll wait, and not recall on their boots when it's a really good time to recall there. Like those types of things are also very common. And you can see like Kayle's just walking up for me to trade with them. I ended up missing my hook, and then yeah, they just don't know what abilities do. Like he flashed there, like he was scared I was gonna kill him. Like I had no kill angle, he doesn't know. A lot of them, they don't know their champion's kill angles, their champion's strengths, weaknesses, those types of things as well. I'm gonna take a sip of water because I've been talking a lot. Not used to talking so much after not really talking for like a week, so getting back into the swing of things, talking a lot. But yeah, again here, kind of those, you see those main things, like we're able to abuse them. We don't really get any crazy lead here as well. Like this isn't one of the games where I'm just solo killing my lane opponent 10 times. This was like my first Mordekaiser game in probably months. So definitely also was just getting used to the champion again. But yeah, here, I mean, we get an insanely big trade onto the Kayle there. And again, like he just walks out of minion range, or out of minions, so that I'm getting a trade just with him. And then there we get the flash onto him, and we do end up getting the kill. So also really weird recalls. Like I see a lot of weird recalls for whatever reason, like that, where he's just like, I don't really know what he's doing. I see that very often as well. I don't really know why. There's a lot of weird things in low elo. But yeah, again, so as we see, as the early game's ending, again, just the main things that we saw, for the most part, is that, again, people don't punish last hits. They get overly greedy even when their champion's not that strong early. They are way too concerned with winning every lane phase. They're never okay with going even or slightly behind to outscale. They don't take proper recall timers for their items, and they don't trade around champion strengths, ability cooldowns, that type of thing for the most part. And because of that, we were able to get a really big lead, even with just one kill. And again, you can stack waves really effectively on people as well. But then here we just go for the Nunu. Pretty easy. I think we end up ulting her, yeah. And then pretty straightforward there to get the kill. And yeah, I mean, again, nothing complicated there. There's not a lot of complicated things you have to do in low elo, but now at this point, like, I've gotten such a big lead that I can just trade extremely, like, I literally two-shot the kill at that point. And so into the mid game, then, like, kind of the main thing to understand is a lot of times people do take really weird roams, and knowing how to punish that is important. So, like, a lot of times the enemy will roam randomly on, you know, like, you'll have a wave in your top lane and they'll just, like, go bottom lane for no reason, or they'll go mid, or they'll just recall at weird times. And punishing that by just getting plates, getting turrets, that type of thing is really important. And then keeping track of jungle as well, so, like, you don't get overly punished, because sometimes also their jungle will gank you 5 times because they just don't know what they're doing, or, like, they don't have a concept of efficiency the same way that they do in higher elo. So because of that, it's really important to get wards on their Krugs or on their red buff when you can, if you're not strong enough. At this point, honestly, I'm strong enough to 1v2 them, so I don't really care anymore. I don't care anymore. For the most part, if their jungle comes, especially because I have my ultimate to deal with it. And I've also found, like, champion choice is kind of nice, or kind of important. A champion like Renekton, for example, it's a little hard to just solo carry in low elo, because you kind of, like, you get a lead, you're strong, you can draw pressure, whatever, but you can't really, like, solo carry a game. Like, you don't get so fed that your damage is so absurd unless you literally, like, go 10-0 early game or something. You don't have kind of absurdly oppressive, like, damage or anything like that. You're kind of just, like, a decently strong champion who can get good leads and then facilitate their team. When you're in plat, you're in emerald, you don't really want to facilitate your team. You want to play something pretty selfish that does an absurd amount of damage. So Mordekaiser, for example, you get fed on him, it's GG. You're going to one-shot everyone. You get fed as a Gnar, even though he is more of the Renekton side of things, where he's very kind of like drawing pressure, supportive type of champion. The difference with Gnar is he can have those game-changing plays to really carry, because he can get, like, that 3-man ultimate. He can do something insane. Whereas if you're playing on the Renekton, you can really just target one person. You can't do much more than that. So understanding the champion choice as well is a pretty important thing for kind of carrying at this level of gameplay. And honestly, in most levels of gameplay even. But definitely, especially there. And you can also see my damage is just, like, I'm one-shotting people at this point. And so, of course, once you get fed, it's pretty straightforward to play. Kind of the early game getting to that point that's important, which again you can do very easily by just punishing these simple mistakes that the opponents make and knowing your champion's limits very well. If you do those things, like, I don't really I'm yawning, sorry. I don't really see a reason why you shouldn't be able to climb out of low elo if you're able to do those things, because then at that point you just get so fed that now you can just trade with people in a pretty cocky manner, like you see me doing here, where I'm pretty much just killing this Nunu for free. I don't remember. No, I think I missed my spell, yeah. So I kind of choked this, actually. So maybe I'm awful. So yeah, if I can climb in low elo, even after doing that, I'm sure you can too. But yeah, I missed my Q there. Kind of get punished for that. It is what it is. But the other thing is, like, comebacks are really, really easy to make as well. So this isn't necessarily related to this game, but one of the biggest mistakes I see people make in low elo are just, like, not knowing how to push lead. So when you're even gold, or you're ahead in gold, or when you're even gold, sorry, or you're, like, slightly behind, or it's, like, early game and the outer turrets are still up, your goal is kind of to get those turrets for the most part. So, like, you don't want to go for a random fight. You'd rather play around getting that turret. Maybe if there's an objective, you fight over it, but right after, your goal is to get the turret. That's usually the goal. Just outer turrets especially, then you can get the mid turret after. But if you get the tier 1 outer turrets, you're probably happy. That's really your main goal. But once those are gotten, your new goal can often become to protect your turrets. And a lot of people don't understand this shift in low elo. So like they'll have an early game where they're legitimately up like 500 plus gold, and then after they're up like 500, or sorry, 5,000, not 500. They're up like 5,000 plus gold as a team, and then after they get up that 5,000 plus gold, they keep trying to push their lead on the tier 2 turret, on the inhibitors. And what they end up doing is they get caught, because you're of course going to get caught if you go that deep at like 5-10 minutes into the game. You're just going to get caught, and there's nothing else you can do about it. And then the enemy will catch you, they'll take your turrets, they'll get the gold bounties, and they'll come back. And that's just the main thing like I see a lot of people do. They'll let you come back very easily. And again, I know I'm not talking super much about the gameplay, just because we're kind of more focused on just different mistakes and kind of ways to avoid that. And really the way to avoid it, again, is just push out your waves before you make a play. So before you end up going for that tier 2 turret, you push your other waves out. Worry more about the fact that not only is your top lane pushed, but your mid and your bot are also pushed, rather than just one wave being pushed and just playing hard on that. So that's kind of, again, another really important thing. And a lot of people, they just don't do that in low elo. They're just pretty much like, I'm going to play around my lane, I'm going to keep pushing, and I'm just going to go for as many turrets as possible. I'm only worried about getting a bigger lead for myself. I'm not worried about protecting, you know, the lead from the enemy coming back, getting gold bounties. They just don't understand how gold bounties work so super well. That type of thing for sure. And then the other thing I found is when you do get really fed, because another thing I know a lot of people have happen in low elo, they'll get really fed in a game, but they don't know how to kind of close it out. And really the main thing to understand about closing out games in low elo is that you probably want to group a bit more than average. So if we look at the map here, for example, a lot of times in a good game where I thought the players were good, I would want to be bot right now, getting pressure and pressuring that turret and then rotating after. But in this game, I'm going to over prioritize the fight. So why am I going to over prioritize the fight here? Because the bottom lane, as we see, is already pushing. So if the enemy don't go, I don't need to go. And because my teammates are usually going to overgroup and fight, I'm going to end up wanting to rotate and fight with them, simply for the fact that I know they're probably going to randomly fight and throw. Like, this is a very common thing, and unfortunately I was trying to ult and I didn't ult there, so I ended up dying. If I ulted properly, I would have killed like all of them, but I just misclicked my ult, so that's my fault. But again, they're usually, when you get a lead, your teammates are going to overgroup and they're often going to die anyways. So if you're already ahead in low elo and you're really strong as an individual like I am here, you want to group with your team when you can, because you know they're going to force fights, and if you're stronger, you're going to win the fights because you're fed. So the main thing you need to do is anytime that the waves are already pushed on the side lanes, for example, in the later parts of the game, like 11-12 minutes when Baron's up, you want to group with your team, and you only want to go to the side lane once the enemy pushed the wave. So like, let's say that the Kayle pushed the bottom lane wave earlier there, I would have gone earlier to bot. But since nothing was pushed, it makes more sense to initially go through mid lane because I expect a fight. And I did, and indeed a fight happened. Of course, I messed it up, so we lost it. But like, and the thought process was there, just a mistake in terms of mechanics, which is all good. That happens sometimes. But here we ult Kayle, they use their flash, and we end up getting the Kayle pretty easily there. And so even here, another thing is like the enemy get Baron, you're not actually as worried as you should be in high elo, because the main thing that happens in low elo, they get Baron and then they all group mid, and then maybe you can catch one person on side. And then again, they're just grouping in mid, so they don't actually get that much out of their Barons. A Baron is usually not game ending in this elo the same way that it is in other elos. And then there we get to Lissandra 1 HP. I think we Q flash her. And at that point, again, I'm just so fed in these fights that I can pretty much one-shot everyone. Pretty funny, not gonna lie. It's pretty funny just one-shotting everyone with your bonks as Mordekaiser in low elo, so I do kind of enjoy it. I think it's funny. I get bored pretty fast, to be honest, stomping people, but it is a little funny. Hopefully Riot reverts that change so that I can actually play high elo games instead of waiting 4 hours for a game. But, you know, we'll see. Otherwise, we'll just keep smurfing and try to push this. I think I can get this account to Master or Grandmaster before the season ends, because it ends in like 10 days. So that's kind of the goal. But yeah, at this point also, another thing is kind of understanding building. Like, a lot of times people build the exact same thing in low elo every game. And honestly, it's not that bad to build the same thing every game. It's not good, but like, you can usually get away with it. But if you are looking to like hard carry games, one important thing is understanding it's okay to build a bit more defensively when you're really ahead. So like this game, for example, I got really fed. I had a lot of damage items. I now want to make sure I have some level of defensive item so that I can't just throw the game, right? Because I am squishy still with my build, so I end up going for the Spirit Visage, and then here, I mean, Leandries, because they're like, you know, relatively tanky. Honestly, I don't think Leandries is the best choice here, though. Probably would have wanted just like, honestly, Twin Guard, because I am pretty fed. So it would kind of just make sense to have something a bit more defensive, just to make sure I can't like throw or anything, since I already have so much damage. So kind of understanding that when you do get really fed, your later, your third, fourth, fifth item can usually be more defensive on a lot of champions. Here we end up ulting the Lissandra and one-shotting her because my champion is funny when he's fed. And yeah, I mean, at this point, again, you see how I'm grouping? Even though those side lanes are kind of pushing, I wouldn't really want to do this as much in high elo, but I can expect fights to happen really frequently in low elo. And then I can go to the sides after winning the fight if I need to. The enemy, they usually don't punish you on for pushing or for not pushing the sides as much. They don't backdoor you as often. And so you can oftentimes, especially if you're really, really fed, just kind of look for these extra fights and then respond to the side lane a little later. Now, it depends on the situation, because again, if there's no objective up, there's nothing to do, and I don't expect my team to fight because they're not grouping in mid, I'll go to the side lane right away. I don't know why I keep yawning. I guess it's kind of early in the morning. But yeah, I would go to the side lane right away if I didn't see my team grouping mid and kind of take advantage of that time. So the important thing is, like, when you see those chances where no one's fighting, you make sure you push out the side lanes there so you don't have to go there when your teammates inevitably do fight randomly. A lot of random fighting in this elo, as I said, a lot of fighting not over objectives. And if you're behind, then you really want to take advantage of the fact that the enemy will overgroup and not group with them and just play to push out the side lanes. But when you're ahead or you're even, you want to play a lot more around kind of overgrouping and kind of like giving into the low elo sort of gameplay of just grouping a bunch. Again, it's hard to always determine when you should group or shouldn't, because you shouldn't just be grouping 24/7. But again, a lot of it kind of relates to your strength. So like the stronger you are as a team, the more you're hitting your power spikes, you're going to want to group. So like you don't want to group super hard as a one item Mordekaiser because he's not that strong on one item. But if you're a one item Renekton who's, you know, 1,000 gold ahead of everyone in the game, you probably want to be grouping a little more. So kind of understanding your champion strengths again. Like when you hit that death cap on Mordekaiser, or you hit second, third item, or you're really ahead of the pace of the game, that's when you want to group, because then that's when it makes sense. And then also just last thing is getting objectives. So again, we see as we're going to the end of the game here, going for the objective at the end of the game rather than just barreling down mid lane and just hoping you win the fight and then end the game. Very, very important. And a lot of times you can convince your team to go for the objective, as we do here. And so then we just kind of push, you know, with the Elder. And because we have Elder, we do like 1,000,000 damage. I missed this. Oh yeah, I kind of in here. So pretend you guys didn't see this. You guys did not see that. I just want to make it very clear. You guys were like, you were looking the other way. Your mom called you that dinner is ready, so go get dinner. That didn't happen. Did not see that. But either way, again, this grouping thing is really the kind of the biggest thing. Like people don't know when to fight or when to kind of, you know, side lane. Again, when you're behind, just take advantage of that, the fact that they're going to overgroup, and just play for, you know, gold bounties, play for farm. Because even when you fall behind, you can definitely come back just through proper farming. And then when you're ahead, make sure you take advantage of your specific power spikes. Don't overforce those fights on random timers, pretty much. Just, you know, force the fights once you are stronger. Obviously here, you know, I was fighting a bunch this game because I got way stronger way earlier because I, you know, stomped lane, of course. But even if you don't stomp lane, right, you again, kind of talked about it, right, just making sure you're waiting until you hit those certain power spikes, because they are going to give you a lot of free waves. You're going to be able to get your gold. You're going to be able to come back. And as long as you're efficient, as long as you're getting proper gold, you're going to be able to usually win a lot of fights in low elo. Again, this is like Emerald gameplay. I'm one game from Diamond at this point. I'm sure we'll hit it today on stream. I mean, I'll already be Diamond by the time you watch this video, but yeah. And then at this point, again, like notice how I'm grouping with my team here, even though the correct play is to go top or bot. and then I'm waiting for someone to overextend, and then I'm going to catch out that overextension. And again, this is not something you should actually do in high elo, but it's something that you should do when the enemies suck, because that just takes more advantage of the fact that your teammates are probably going to randomly get caught, so you might as well make sure that they don't. And then again, once the enemy overextend, you just kind of move over to that side and you go for them. And again, if the lanes weren't pushing and they were like, pushing into us, I would push out the side lanes. But because they're not pushing into us and they're pretty safe, I can just kind of do this. And again, just eventually, since I'm so strong, the enemy are going to overextend. I'm going to be able to find a catch on them, and then I'm going to bonk them because I'm a full build Kale, or a full build Mordekaiser, not Kale. I'm not playing Kale. But yeah, again, champion choice as well. Early game, making sure you punish the last hits, play around your champion strengths, and then later on in the game, understanding when to group based on the things we talked about in this video. That's really the main thing you need to understand in low elo. If you do that, you can climb. And again, you don't play the exact same way in low and high elo. Sometimes you do overgroup a little more, and that's okay if you're strong, but do not overgroup when you're weaker or when you're behind in gold, because that is how you are going to lose a lot of games. So if you understand that simple thing, I believe you can probably climb. As we said, here my team actually does a nice job of getting Baron. We ended up getting the Baron, and then we just go for a little fight here. And why do I keep yawning, bro? I don't know, but either way, I guess I just got so bored of one-shotting everyone, that it is what it is. But again, another one-shot, because why not one-shot at one more person? Riot Games wants me to bully low elo players because they don't want me to actually play the game on my main account. So I am going to do what Riot Games wants me to do because, I'm just a sheep who does whatever other people tell me to do. And that's really the main thing to take away from this video is if you want to get better at the game, just do what Talon tells you to do and don't have any free will or free thoughts yourself. You can see here we got Emerald 2 off of that game. 24 kills, I got MVP. I know you guys are like, well, Talon, you're so cool, you're so good at the game. I agree, I know. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.